हम अंदर से टूट चुके हैं।
हम सबके मारे रंग हैं।
और अब वक्त है उस स्लाइड का जिसका आप सबको बेसब्री से इंतजार था। द कट ऑफ परसेंटेज।
So hi guys, welcome to the new episode of Placement Podcast. और आज हमारे साथ है मेरे friend Ahmed. So Ahmed, please introduce yourself.
So hello, I'm Ahmed. I have been in computer science. I've been working on computer science fields, and I'm currently in my final year of computer science BTech, right? And so I recently got the offer from Amazon to work as a systems development engineer there. So that's what I'm currently doing, and yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ahmed. So guys, let me tell you something about. So I and Ahmed know each other from the very first year of college. We have been working in one particular team. So we have race clubs in our college, and we were working in the same club, but in different domains. So I've known Ahmed for quite some time now. एंड सो स्टार्टिंग विद अहमद, ये बताओ तुम्हारी एजुकेशनल बैकग्राउंड कहाँ से है, तुमने कहाँ से अपनी 12th तक की पढ़ाई की है और फिर तुम एसआरएम में कैसे पहुंचे?
Right. So मेरी most of my studies were done in Mumbai itself, right? So from till 10th and 12th both were done from Mumbai, right? And the schools weren't really that special. It's just that the teachers that I had were, we were quite frank with them. So good teachers, good studies. I was very bad at everything except for computer science. So that's like, it was sort of a passion for me, I guess. So computer science was a passion for me since I think 8th standard or 9th standard. I was heavily into computer science. So that's what became basically the primary subject of interest, right? So after that, we went into the college and basically started, right? And you could say I was a dumb idiot. Okay, and I wasn't like really great at, I didn't know what colleges to go basically. So yeah, so it sort of started in that way. And SRM was like the first pick, I guess. It was like SRM generally start the admission process really early.
Yeah.
So I basically got like we were asked to join early, and I was just in a hurry to get this over with. So yeah, let's do it. I just got when I took admission.
Well, that's amazing. So as we were discussing, as Ahmed has already mentioned, so he has started working for Amazon. So Ahmed, अब हम वीडियो के जो मेन पार्ट है हमारा की प्लेसमेंट पॉडकास्ट. So now we'll be discussing about the entire process of Amazon. But before that, if you can tell us, were you applying for any other companies as well, or was Amazon the first company like you applied and you got placed in? So how was that placement season experience for you? And then maybe you can describe about Amazon in particular.
Right. So no, Amazon was not the first company I was applied for. Actually, the first interview I gave was for seimens, right? And I got rejected for it very badly. And the reason for that was because companies like Siemens really like to make sure that their company culture is very formal, right? So I actually was in an interview for that, and I remember very distinctly the guy literally saw me with like really long hair. So everybody was at home. It was online interview. I had like really long hair, and I wasn't really wearing a tie or collared shirts and stuff like that. So I think that left a very bad impression because I know that I literally completely slayed the interview. Yeah, अच्छे से, right? But I wasn't really the person, I wasn't really the person for them, right? And the next company was we went for, I think it was ABN. So Anheuser-Busch InBev, काफी बड़ी brewing company है. It's one of the, I think, in case you guys are drinking lovers, you guys might know brands like Corona and Budweiser. So they are owned by ABN, right? And ABN चाहता है कि they generally take people they want to do digital stuff for them for basically their own customers, right? So wholesalers and those people, they want to make their own process very very simple and fast. So even web allows their like hires engineers to make some automation stuff, right? I created bots, okay,
Hmm.
automation bots and GUI bots and whatever. So these bots basically that did a lot of quick fast and automated a lot of work. Uh, the ABN web was a mistake by me. Okay, so I had a senior. Okay, this senior was he was working with me in a club, right? So Akshat ne kaha कि he like we were in a club together, right? So हाँ हम लोग club में थे. After some time, so the club which we were working in had a bit more mechanical and electrical aspect to it, right? But I wanted to be specifically corely, web and application and software based.
Yeah.
So I switched teams. I think late in my second or third year,
Yeah.
right? So मैंने उसमें switch किया, and I found like some new seniors. They were like I saw some seniors who were like really really based in very very good companies in that club, right? So उसमें switch किया हमने, and उससे मुझे पता चला कि he got an offer from Justpay, right? And Justpay it's like I think it gives around 24 or 25 L whole मतलब basically package, right? इतना देता है वो minimum. So I was like, man, I'm working with this guy. I know what he is like. I know what I'm like, right? If this guy got 24, I can get 12 at the minimum,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, कि minimum 12 तो मिलना चाहिए मुझे package में, right? So ABN was giving 12.25, just above my base. Okay,
Hmm.
so I had a baseline कि हाँ 12 चाहिए मुझे. So ABN was giving me just above it, right? So I took it, right? And if anybody who has been in SRM, even many colleges follow the same rule. We have a concept of 2x, okay,
Yes.
a 2x rule. So 2x rule basically says that unless and until a company is giving you more than twice of what you already have in packages, right? So for example, I got ABN with 12. So I need a company which is willing to offer me 24 and up.
Yeah, so
Okay.
for all our viewers who are just new to this placement season, मैं एक बार फिर से बता देना चाहता हूँ, SRM has this policy. So if you are placed in a company, let's say which is offering a package of N या X जैसा उसने कहा, तो आप उसका 2x पर ही अप्लाई कर सकते हो. So just make sure before you are applying to a company, or if you are very sure कि हाँ मुझे इस कंपनी में चाहिए या मेरा रेंज ये है, मैं इससे नीचे नहीं जाऊंगा, तो जस्ट मेक श्योर आप रैंडमली डोंट अप्लाई फॉर एनी कंपनीज कि हाँ ये भी सही लग रही है वो भी सही लग रही है, आप अपना एक सेट कर लो. और हाँ प्लीज अहमद प्लीज कंटिन्यू.
राइट, सो ये बेसलाइन सेट करना इज अ गुड आइडिया, ठीक है, लेकिन मैंने ये नहीं सोचा बिकॉज देयर आर टियर्स एज वेल. टेक्निकली स्पीकिंग एनी कंपनी जो 10 के ऊपर जा रही है, I think it's ring, right? And then you get super dream, which is about 20, and then as Marky, yeah, as this goes on, this is a ladder, right? It doesn't really have to be a specific point, but it is a ladder either, right? So technically 12 when set here, right? That would mean I would need to get a company. I cannot get a company which is which is in 18 or 16 or 24 even, right? Because it's 12.25, so it should be 24.5 and up, right?
Yeah.
So I cannot get into those. So just an example, what are companies I missed out on this, right? I missed out on PayPal. I missed out on JustPay, right? So, and I think I also missed out on Comworld as well, right? So three amazing companies, probably dream companies to be very honest, because fintech is one of the biggest fields in India right now. The two fintech companies I missed out on, really good companies. I wanted to be part of them, but I missed out completely, right? So I was like, I don't know how many more companies are going to come here, which is willing to give me more than 24.5 L in package, right? So I was like, let's just sit tight. I was having a bit of a FOMO. Okay.
Yeah.
I was having a bit of a FOMO. कि लग रहा था कि यार ये तो सब कुछ वैसा हो जाएगा. I cannot probably get into a better company, right? Amazon came along. They were willing to give for the highest package. They were willing to give us 30. So this is talking about non-SD tracks. So technically, Amazon comes in two different placements. drives. So one is non-SD tracks. This may include things which are not directly SD, mostly things are surrounding SD, like a systems engineer or support engineer or QA engineer, right? QA stands for qualifications. So uh, Amazon I for first non-SD tracks. It came for these guys. Okay. Uh, and their highest package was 30. So the only one that was eligible for in Amazon
Amazon.
was this role. That's it. I was not at all eligible for this, right? उसका पूरा like interview process होता है, तुम्हारा पूरा placement process है, right? And that's basically how, because it was the last chance I had,
Yes.
okay, and I took it. And when there's a pilot interview, I think you
Hmm.
work like anything.
Yes.
I literally remember waking up in middle of the night, just like randomly doing some DS problem. I did some DS problem in the morning and I could not solve it. Randomly waking up in the middle of the night around 3 or 4 a.m. Just thinking like, yeah, I got a solution and just start coding stuff. It was really hectic time. I had a really bad phone, right? And it was literally like the last chance I had.
Yes, Ahmed, if I remember exactly, AB InBev was among the first few companies which came to campus. So I guess you had a sufficiently long buffer in between, like till you got the offer from AB InBev and when Amazon came. I guess it was a good 1 or 1.5 month or even more, right?
Yeah. So again, like I said, Avian Web was one of the first companies that came onto campus, right?
Yeah.
And after that, I missed out on a lot of them because of the 2x thing, right? And also, I wasn't able to apply to many of them. There were many issues with this. To be honest, the generally speaking, the marquee companies that come to college are often like they are related to top students in the college. I was definitely not one of them. I was nowhere near them. Okay? So the thing about big companies as like Amazon is that generally speaking,
Yeah.
practically is that they love to that they want to give a chance to everybody. Okay, so उन्हीं ने कहा कि doesn't matter which field you are, doesn't matter what is your rank in the college, apply करो. Okay, and that's how it worked out. So I think a lot of guys applied to that, and that's basically how they sorted it out. And the thing about Amazon, I saw personally, and I think this is same for other big companies as well. They do not want to kick you out of their system. So basically, like let's say there is 50 people who have been shortlisted after some assessments and stuff. So they don't want to like kick you out, or they want to shorten it to a certain number of people.
Mhm.
Okay, so they will shorten it to a certain number of people. That is like the last criteria. Okay, last thing they want to do. The first thing they want to do is just if you have even a single thing that puts you on an edge, right? It gives you an edge over anything else, right? So let's say you might be good at Linux system stuff, right? So if they just see that, like, and they want somebody who is great at that stuff, right? They doesn't matter what parts you're bad at. They only look at the parts you're good, and they try to keep you in that that specific list that you want to hire list, 20 engineers, right? So they try to keep you in those 20 lists based on what you're good at.
Yeah. So, Ahmed, what was the process like for Amazon and how many rounds were there? So let's go with that. So if you can explain like what was the first round, and as you said, there wasn't any shortlisting as that of sort, which we see generally in most of the companies that come for placement. So how
Yeah.
placement round and like how long did it take like for the entire process? Because most of the companies which I see generally are taking around 1 to 1.5 months to complete the entire placement process with like 5 to 6 rounds as we see for other companies as well. So
Mhm.
what was the process like?
Right. So before the process, we were actually given anything. We weren't given even anything as a process. To be very
Okay,
honest,
so
right?
there was no
हमें
pre-placement talk for the same.
Yeah, there was a pre-placement talk with it was generally regarding stuff like online assessment, and they just said there's going to be an online assessment and there's
Mhm.
going to be interviews. That's it.
Yeah.
Literal, that's it. Okay, so they did not specify how many interviews. I expected to be at least 4 interviews because
Mhm.
Amazon sort of does the 4 interview thing. It's fairly common for even for higher roles, they do like 6 interviews and stuff like that. Uh, Even like when I get to talk with senior engineers in the company, they often tell me this stuff. There are 6 interviews and 7 interviews just to get in the company, right? So I was expecting there should be minimum of 4 because professors there generally 4, right? So we had an online assessment, and the list basically they have 4 or 5 roles they wanted to give, right? In non-SD, they wanted to give 4 or 5 roles. So the online assessment team, we all did it, right? So there were a lot of questions from different fields. So the thing is, every role that they had generally specializes in one or other thing. Okay. So let's say a systems engineer would be amazing, should be in theory should be amazing at pretty much everything and Linux. Right. So Linux is one of the plus parts they really like to look at. Right. Let's say his quality assurance engineer should be amazing at testing part. Okay. Similarly, a support engineer should know a little bit of everything. So it does he does that they don't need to be best at everything. They just need to know everything. Okay. So they sort of have a criteria for every single role, right? And I somehow I don't know how I just somehow hit it on the head for systems engineering. Okay. So like I think based on what they told me that I was pretty much good at everything and I was pretty amazing at Linux. So I sort of hit it on the head for systems engineer, and I sort of got shortlisted for that specific role. So people were getting shortlisted for different roles based on that, and nobody really know how it was going unless until we actually got into the interview and we got into inside the company, and then we asked the same question. So they told us this, and this is the way it happens, right? So that is how we got shortlisted for the online assessments after the online assessments, right? So I think there were approximately, I guess, I'm saying around 2,000 applicants for this thing, I guess. Uh, I might be wrong on that. It might be 1,600 or 1,800. It's more than it's
More than
nearing
1,000, yeah, applicants.
yeah, it was nearing 2,000. It was less than that, but it was nearing 2,000. But after the whole online assessment thing, we I think got shortlisted to 108 or 109 people, right? And from here on, the interview process began. So they started the interview process after this. The first interview was basically to see how good you are at programming and problem solving. So that was the first thing they wanted to check. And for every role, we got a specific PPT which said like these should be your field of focus, and apart from these fields of focus, you should be like they gave basically a level of how amazing you should be with problem solving. Okay, so for systems engineer and from programmer analyst, these are two roles which required the engineers to be amazing at like best at problem solving. So almost at the level of an SD. Technically speaking, our interviews were very close to an SD, right? So yeah, so that was the thing. So first round was the problem solving interview or coding interview, as you call it, right? So first round I got an interview. Uh, we jumped into a call. So Amazon uses Chime. I don't know how many people have heard of it. It's one of the famous platforms for video conferencing, but it's something that Amazon uses internally as well as for stuff like this, right? So हमारा Chime पे interview start हुआ, and she gave me a link for a whiteboard. Okay, so generally अगर ये real life interview होता, so there would be a whiteboard and I would be literally like writing code down on that thing. But because it was a virtual thing, उसने मेरे को एक link भेजा, and we were actually writing code on that. All the interviews we were writing code on that, right? And he gave me a problem. This was so generally speaking, if anybody who has been doing science or have been doing DSA for some time, they know platforms such as LeetCode, right? And LeetCode and CodeChef. There is a lot of them, right? I personally was a LeetCode person, so and there was a sort of a mantra I followed. We'll go over there a bit later. But basically, I got good at LeetCode really fast, and that basically I covered a lot more ground in a very short time. I have been terrible at DSA for some time because I do not stick to single languages. I do not really like doing them. I was more of a development person from day one. So it was, I think, Akshat can attest to that. So yeah, that was basically the thing. I wasn't really, I had to do this whole coding interview. Right, so we got in the coding interview. The first question was fairly easy. So the first question he gave me, right? I wrote the whole program down. So the thing they were saying in between was that write a line and explain your logic behind.
Okay.
So generally speaking, the way to go about in a whiteboarding interview is that you generally draw diagrams and stuff. I do not have an area where I can draw diagrams. So I
Mhm.
just had to write down the algorithm further. So I wrote down comment and just started writing the algorithm which I thought was possibly feasible for this. And coding interviews, you want to go with the brute force or the very simplest approach. You want to write that down, right, and then you want to optimize it along the way, right? So that is how you should go about in the coding interview, generally speaking. And I wrote down the brute force algorithm, right?
Mhm.
Then I could have written down somewhat in intermediate code, right? And then I went
Yeah.
directly to the most optimized version of that. So I did not go to the intermediate level of code. I just went to the most optimized version. So generally speaking, when you do something like that, there are two possibilities in such cases. Either you already know what that question, you have already done that question, my case, right? Or second case would be you are amazing at problem solving and you sort of just think in such a way that you think of the most optimized solution first go. Okay. So I already knew that question, the first one, right? So
Yeah.
I literally wrote down the program and I just told him, I explained the whole program. And they say, okay, but again, like he sort of knew immediately that, yeah, this guy already knows this question. No point in asking, right? So he said he gave me a second one. This was a lot difficult. So it had concepts of dynamic programming, it has concepts of hash tables and Boolean tables and whatnot. So this question was like I was like, yeah, so this is supposed to be a lead code hard level question. So again, people who do lead code should know what a lead code hard level question is, right? So he gave me this question, and I was asked to do it. So again, this was a bit of a process for me. I
Mhm.
went down from one thing to second thing to third thing, right? And it was in the brute force. It was supposed to be, I think, n raised to four complexity. So any people who know space and time complexity, it's again one of the few topics you want to study before a coding interview. Space and time complexities. There are often questions that say things like do it in the space of one, or do it in constant space, or do it in a linear space. So you must understand what these terms mean, right? And you should try to approach and find the most, in the degrees of complexities. You want to find a solution which is like the on the lowest degree of solution. That's the most optimized code you can write. So they basically gave me this question, right, and said, do this, right? So I went through all these degrees. I wrote down my code approximately 3 times,
Mhm.
each time optimizing it a bit. And that's basically how the interview went. And the interview was pretty impressed with that because the most optimized solution is again lead code hardware question is not an easy question to solve. So I guess the interview was pretty impressed with that. Uh, I'll just tell you something that I generally do after an interview. Not a thing you should do every time, but it's sort of a peek into the interviewer's mind. You just simply ask them a question. You just simply say that how was I after the end of the interview, right? Just in notes or footnotes, right? You just ask them, hey, like, मैं कैसा था? Hey, how was
Ah.
this interview? How well did I do?
Yeah.
Right? And once the interview is over, they are extremely candid. And in an IT company, they're always extremely candid. Okay, so he just they always end with a single statement. So wait for the results.
Mhm.
But before that specific sentence, you get to understand what they want to do. Okay, so I sort of knew that I impressed them.
Mhm.
So this is a technique that you can do. Sometimes interviewers, I found that uh, people who have been interviewing for a long time, they get sort of pissed at this question. But if it's an IT person, they shouldn't really.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the coding interview, right?
Mhm.
So this time between online assessment to coding interview, there was a big buffer in between. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
so just getting sorting down the list from 1600 or 1800 students, engineers to 100 is a big gap. So they had to do a lot of work behind the scenes and reduce this number. Plus, they wanted to assign roles
Yeah.
as well, right? So it was a lot of there's quite a bit of buffer between these two. But after the coding interview, so I did it in the morning, right? I received a mail, I guess, 8 hours after that.
Mhm.
That yeah, this you have passed the second round, and this is the name of the interview. This is the link for the interview. Hope to see you there. And this was the line that I actually I love in the way. Uh, you don't need to wear formals. Just wear comfortable clothes and get in the interview.
Yeah.
Very, very opposite to the seimens, as you can see, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so IT companies love people love casual things. They don't really want to take themselves too seriously. तो ये हुआ है ना and second round का link आ गया and this was again I think 11-12 बजे. So this sort of this I'll tell you something that happened behind this. After this first interview, we sort of got a list of I guess 50 some people who have made it, 40 some people who made it to the second interview, right? And we sort of went through LinkedIn. Literally, me and one more guy was there. So we were sort of preparing together. He also got somehow shortlisted for the same role as me as well, right? And we both were like, I was amazing at computer networking stuff. He was amazing at operating system stuff. So I was testing on computer networking. He was testing me on operating systems. A give and take, right? So we were basically going through the LinkedIn and just searching everybody on LinkedIn, and we were just literally like, messaging him how was the interview and stuff. Literally everybody in the whole list, 40 people. So this is something that we did. Again, this is a very SRM thing to do. Not really, not every college does it, but we sort of did. Okay. Um, yeah. So basically, before the second interview, we got in touch with few people who were who we sort of got to know few people. We got to understand what the interview was like for them, right? And then the second interview came, right? Mine was, I think, third in the morning.
Mhm.
So approximately 45 minutes interview. Second interview was approximately 45 minutes on
Mhm.
the lower scale, basically 45 minutes for an interview, 15 minutes questioning or something like that, right? So total a 1 hour interview was supposed to be there, right? So first guy went in there. He got out. I was in touch with him because he was the first one in, so I wanted to know how it was, what kind of
Yeah.
questions he was asking, right? So he came out, right, and he said to me, and I repeat, it's an experience, जाके enjoy करो. मेरी फट गई. I lost it. मैंने कहा, this is very very bad. I'm already nervous as hell, right? And when somebody says this is an experience, go and enjoy it. I just lost it. I'm like, no, this is too tough. I'm not going to be there. I
Yeah.
already was like scared out of my mind. Okay. And the second guy was my friend who
Mhm.
like I said, so he went to the interview, came out of the interview. Mine was just after that, and I think I wasn't able to contact him. So I got into my interview, right? My interview with him. And so they give you a list of uh, is my audio working fine?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, fine. So they give you a list or basically documents telling you how you should prepare for your interview.
Mhm.
Okay, and they tell you stuff like you must understand star technique. So star is a way of basically answering to a situation question. So generally they give you a situation, you're supposed to give an answer based on that situation. So that's a technique that should be followed while asking situational questions. They also give you a list of leadership principles at Amazon that you should know about before an interview, and you should answer in that. Your answer should somehow basically show one of those leadership principles, right? So these things sort of were like gimmicks, or you can say techniques that they told us, right? And one of the things was this, that you don't need to answer immediately
Okay.
after the question. You should take approximately 30 seconds or some time and then answer the question in a very structured manner. Okay, I was not following this in the interview. Okay, I was nervous out of my mind. So so interview started. She asked me to introduce myself. Then basically told me the whole structure of the interview. Right? So we started with basic stuff regarding computer science, so things like language which I prefer, and have I made any projects before, so things like that. So I had a project. It's sort of a single project I put in every interview because it has literally everything you can have in computer science web-wise, okay,
Yeah.
web architecture wise. So that was the project that I went with. And then she said, we'll ask the questions regarding, she'll ask the question regarding computer science, basically operating systems, some computer networking, database management, right? The core computer science subjects, right? And then
Yeah.
after that would be Linux. Okay.
Hmm.
I I'm okay, decent with Linux, but I don't know how to do the stuff that she asked me. Okay,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
let's just go over each part one by one. So for the project, I just like, explained it, right? And then she said that, can you give me a diagram for the system? So the basically, she wanted the project to, she wanted the structure of how my project was working behind the scenes on a higher scale, right? So I opened up draw.io. It's a famous tool if anybody wants to make flowcharts and stuff like that. I open up draw.io. I just drew high level diagrams with boxes saying this is the database, this is the backend server, this is the machine learning server, this is the app server, stuff like that, right? Pretty cool. It looked very, very cool. I was feeling amazing. Like, yeah, I've done it, right? Because Amazon loves to ask questions regarding system architecture, and I was amazing at that part. So people who have been studying system architecture for a time, right? They will all tell you one single guy's name on YouTube. His name is Gaurav Sen, right? And this guy is, if you watch through all his videos, you'll understand how system architecture actually works. And he's amazing at teaching this stuff. He has his own company and stuff. That doesn't really matter, but just the videos that are available on YouTube, his videos, right? They will teach you a lot about system architecture, and you probably can give into system architecture interviews just based on that guy's channel. Okay, Gaurav Sen. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, so, anyways, that happened. So, system architecture, amazing at it. Okay. Then she went over to computer networking. She asked me a few questions about computer networking. I was fine with that because I was amazing at computer networking. Right. So that was something I studied heavily in my engineering years.
Hmm.
I love computer networking. That was it for me. Then she asked me a question, single question about computer networking. So we have a 7 layer OSI model in computer networking, right? So she asked me to explain that using the diagram that I drew of my project, right? And the bad thing about those 7 layers that there are few layers which you really don't draw in diagrams. Things like there's a physical layer, for example. You draw things like routers and fiber cables and stuff. Those are supposed to be in it, right? You don't draw
Hmm.
those in the diagram. You never do, right? So, anyways, I added those in and then explained the whole architecture with all the 7 layers. So that worked out. She asked me questions about OS. I was okay at it, but people at Amazon love to ask you some really nerdy questions. Things like
Hmm.
I was asked two things: spooling, right? One was what is spooling. Uh, Spooling is a technique used by hardware devices. So you often see things like lagging between your touch with the mouse, and then you see a mouse sometimes dragging behind the animation,
Yeah.
right? So that is an example of why spooling happens. So it basically queues up your actions that you want to do with the hardware devices, right? And then it queues them after one by one afterward. So that's basically example of spooling, right? So that was one of them. And you generally don't study terms before interview. You just study questions before interviews, right? But Amazon love to ask you about terms. So that was asked spooling, and in networking was asked piggybacking. Never heard that term before, piggybacking. I'm like, what is this? After the interview I got to know that it's something, it has something to do with the TCP handshake thing. I'm like, nobody uses these terms. Why are they asking me? So it was like they have to ask you nerdy stuff, right? So spooling, and yeah, so OS, I was like I went out, I was fine with that. DBMS, she didn't go into too much details, but she asked me things like ACID. So ACID is basically ACID is type of database atomicity, things like that. So about the database. So she asked me ACID and I went with the definitions and stuff. So it was all fine. She went to Linux. Okay.
Yeah.
And although I'm decent at Linux, okay, I've done a bit of bash scripting and stuff, which I used to do automation stuff back at ABI and as well as for my own self, right? So I was okay at Linux, but the question she asked me was like, first she said, just give me a list of all the Linux commands. No, she asked me for five. I gave her 15. Okay, that was the first mistake. I should not have given her 15. So I gave her 15 different commands. One of them was chmod. So chmod, for people who don't know Linux, chmod basically is responsible for managing permissions to specific folders or files in your own system, right? So I gave that answer, and she just got me a chmod. I will asking questions regarding chmod. Okay, she asked me four questions straight after about on Linux after that. One was something about searching a file by specific, I think update time, right? Searching contents inside the file. There was again chmod. What does it do, and what does chmod codes actually do? So just few things they love to ask questions regarding such questions about Linux. They love to ask questions about Linux, right? I remember I wasn't able to give clear answers for four questions, literally which were like one after the other. I gave them half an answer for approximately three of them. One of them I didn't knew what the hell it is, right? And so basically, like I said, they knew that I was decent at Linux, right?
Yeah.
But they knew that I wasn't really like well versed in. So the last thing that she asked me was to write in a bash script. Now this is something I had done before. So bash is a shell, right? So bash is a terminal similar to a PowerShell or command, right? And bash is, people who have been using Linux or Ubuntu should know about this. But bash also allows you to create shell scripts, and you can run those in your terminal, and it will work just like any other programming language, right? So she asked me to write that down. I created the whole script, right? I executed on my own system. So I was using again Mac during that time. So Bash scripts on very natively on Mac OS. So everything was working fine. Right? So that was the one part where I sort of redeemed myself in Linux. Okay. So again, like I said, they like to see which parts you're good at. So I was good at Bash scripting. I was good at pretty much everything else. I was bad at Linux commands, specific commands, right? So that sort of thing, I got to know that, yeah, after the interview, I felt like, nah, this is going to be really bad. But I was told this by few other people who have interviewed before me, right? Last year, seniors, right? So they told me this as well. So I'm like, okay, fine. I think I have a chance, I guess. But I wasn't really too hopeful. Um, that happened. So this was the last interview. They ask, there's one more thing they love to ask after these interviews, right? So they say that if you have any questions for me, please do ask them. So this is sort of a place where you can actually earn some brownie points. You have to ask questions which you would be interested in, but they don't need to be very, very calculated or very, very specific questions. Okay, so you need to make sure that these questions are sort of generic, and you genuinely have a good amount of interest in their work and the company's work, right? So that's it's sort of a brownie. It's an area where you can earn some brownie points from your interviewer. So you ask such questions, and you make a good impression basically on ending before the ending of the interview. So just like it's one of the places where you guys can actually use some tricks, I guess, for this. So she asked me this. Uh, I asked a few questions. I do not really remember which were they, right? But that happened, and the interview was done. And we are supposed to get a list for this. I guess we got it 2 days afterwards, right? In the morning, and this is basically a sort of a moment was for me. So I was asleep, right? As every engineering student who has not given an interview, he will be sleeping for next 2 days, 3 days. Sometimes I think it was around 12 hours. The this came out, I think, 15 minutes before, also I think before 11:45 around.
Yeah.
Right, so I was sleeping. I got, I think, some messages. I saw a notification. I just put down my phone. I didn't do anything. Then I got a call from a friend. Right, he called me and he said, "You got in." हाँ तेरा हो गया. I'm like, क्या बकवास कर रहा है? This guy isn't really serious. मजाक कर रहा है. फालतू ठांग खींच रहा है, because मैंने इनको बताया था इंटरव्यू का, they knew about how the
Yeah.
interview went. I told them there were 4 questions which I wasn't able to give clear answers to, literally in the line. So first question, I did not able to give an answer. I just like, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm like, this guy is just pulling my leg. Obviously, there is no way, right? I pulled up, I opened my phone, got the list, was searching through it. There are only 25 names in the whole list.
Yes.
Not 25, 24 names, I think. Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, so I went down. Literally the second name in that list was mine. And I'm like, damn, okay, something happened at least. I guess it was something like, yeah, okay, I finally got in. So my last chance,
Definitely,
right?
it
I
was a
woke
talk
up.
amongst not just you, amongst all of us, like all of you, like we who knew you as an acquaintance, because all of us
Yeah.
get the mail, right? And like, okay, okay, this is Ahmed. We know 2, 3 people out there, and like everyone was discussing in our team group. Nevertheless, you're not the part of the team, but it was a discussion. यार अहमद का हो गया यार, क्या बढ़िया है यार, बहुत सही, अपनी टीम से किसी ने बहुत बड़ा फोड़ दिया भाई, क्या बात है. So that was the discussion. Obviously बहुत ही मतलब overwhelming experience होगा जब तुमने खुद ही देखा होगा तब तो फिर.
I kid you not, मैंने घर पे जब मैं उठा था ना, तो I'm like, मैं expect नहीं कर रहा था कि like I would receive a list like that, because I was waking up. I just called a message. I ignored the message. I got a call. I was not believing that guy, because again, friends who started pulling my leg, right? So when I opened and just saw that list, I'm like, yeah. So someday you're going to wake up and something game changing going to happen, right? And something's going to happen to you randomly on some morning, right? Some lazy weekday morning, something good is going to happen to you, and you like be very, very overjoyed, right? So that happened. I told my parents. They were like, yeah, great, because to be very honest, nobody in my family really understand what I do, right? They try to be supportive as much as they can, but a guy who sits on his computer for 12 to 15 hours a day, right, and just types stuff in, and he get paid for that, they do not understand that. It just doesn't make sense to them. So like everybody in my family was obviously happy, because their friends told them it's a good company, or not the good company. Basically, they knew it's a good company, but they told them that it's very difficult to get in, right? And nobody was happy my AB and Bev one. Okay, the reason was
Yeah.
was that because AB and Bev is famous for, well, alcohol.
Yeah.
The thing is, when I told them I got to company which said alcohol, they were not really happy with it, right? I don't think anybody would think it's something to be happy about. Although AB and Bev is again a notoriously tough company to get in, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but nobody in my family was really happy with that. This one, they were like, yeah, okay, great, fine, right? And I got some weird as hell comments after the whole from my relatives and stuff. But let's just go again the discussion
Yeah.
part. So तूने कहा कि तुम लोगों ने discussion किया था in the club, right, about this. So uh, to be very honest, I would literally like swear कि मैं जो ये जो है ना कि जो the only reason this happened was because in my first year, when I didn't know anything, the only thing I really knew was C++, and I was drawing graphics in C++. Who the hell does that, right? So I didn't know stuff. I just knew few languages, C++ and Java and stuff. When I started working on projects inside the club, right, inside our club, right. So the seniors that we have, they sort of lit a fire. Okay, they basically taught us how to learn. Okay, they basically told us that you can learn anything, just need to have the resources for that. You just need to have your own process for learning, right? And that process was somehow actually that process lit a fire under my ass. That they basically told me that this is how you can learn. इस तरह सीखते हैं. I literally learned how to learn from them. Okay, so it's important to know how to learn. It's very important. It's an individual process, and everybody needs to have a way for that.
Precisely.
So, like I say, ki, that was one of the things, and I kid you not, I think on LinkedIn or somewhere I messaged them as well regarding this. Yeah, I completely give you guys credit for this, and faculties and everything, they're great, but you never ever focus in a class. In engineering class, you probably ain't going to focus. The thing that really gets you motivated will be something totally different from your engineering classes. Okay, the way you learn learn stuff will be through some really different ways of going about it. It will never be classes. Okay, learn stuff in classes, but it will never be classes. So yeah, so that's basically how I got the news that I got in. I hadn't received a mail, I think 3 days till after that specific list came out. Right. So after 3 days, when I received the list, mail from Amazon, like, yeah, okay, finally, yep, I'm finally in. Okay. That was like, yeah, this is it. Stamp.
अब हो गया
अब हो गया.
अब हो गया. चलो, बहुत अच्छा था अहमद ने पूरा एक्सपीरियंस शेयर किया. एंड एक्चुअली the thing is, when we discuss, because eventually in the last few months I've been seeing a lot of students know abhi placement season kyunki virtual ho gaya, and I guess we were the first, I guess second batch who actually went into this placement season virtually. वो एंजाइटी सब में बहुत ज्यादा थी कि भैया क्या होता है, कैसे होता है, और वो जो रैंड टेक्सटिंग होती है कि भैया आप बता दो, मैं यहाँ अप्लाई कर रहा हूँ. सो बहुत अच्छा लगा तुमने इतने अच्छे इलैबोरेटिव तरीके से बताया. आई होप ये रियली बहुत लोग जो एम कर रहे हैं ऐसी कंपनीज पे उन्हें बहुत हेल्प करेगा. And
Yeah.
thank you so much. And any last thing you want to say to the students will be, sitting in the placement season, like the next semester, I guess placement. तो कुछ companies आ भी गई, but officially next semester जिनके लिए start होगा, who are
Right.
for this particular domain exclusively. Yeah.
Right. So I guess मैंने सारी चीजें बता दी पूरे पिछले I think आधा घंटा I guess, or right. But मैं एक बार repeat कर देता हूँ. So first thing, you need to have a process to learn. You should know how to learn stuff. Right. Secondly, you should have literally a fire lit under your ass that you need. Only then you perform. That is the only time you actually perform, right? When you have fire lit under your ass, when you're finally getting, completely don't have really any answers and stuff. You just want to do stuff. You have a fire, so that's important, right? And third is, this is sort of a thing I do say, is that you will just like, it's not as if it's not going to happen. Something good is going to happen. Okay, just something good is going to happen. Remember that. It doesn't matter how fast or how late it's going to happen, but something good is going to happen. Some weekday morning, some lazy morning, when you wake up and you get some good news. Okay, so this is going to happen. You don't need to worry about stuff. There will be days you will just like wake up in the middle of the night, just like thinking of some DS problems, right? So there will be days like that, but something good is coming. Just wait for it. Something good is coming.
So thank you so much अहमद, आपने अपना टाइम दिया. एंड गाइस, अगर आपको अहमद से कुछ डाउट हो तो मैं अहमद का लिंक्डइन नीचे दे दूंगा, आप उन्हें कांटेक्ट कर सकते हो, पर प्लीज उन्हें इस तरह से बॉदर मत करना कि वो परेशान हो जाए. बट मैं अहमद का लिंक्डइन नीचे दे दूंगा, आप उन्हें कांटेक्ट कर सकते हो अगर आपको कुछ डाउट हो. एंड थैंक यू सो मच अहमद फॉर बीइंग अ गेस्ट ऑन दिस एपिसोड. And I know you're eventually very preoccupied nowadays. Now the internship has started, I guess. It has started, right?
Yeah, so internship has started almost 1.5 months in the whole internship process. And like, it's fine. On weekends, I am pretty free, so I guess you guys can just drop in the questions.
Yeah,
and I'll
sure.
just sit down on the whole weekend and just try to answer them right. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ahmed. We had a great time. थैंक यू गाइज एंड सी यू इन द नेक्स्ट एपिसोड. नए एपिसोड्स हर संडे आएंगे और मैं ट्राई कर रहा हूँ कि हर संडे आप जिन जिन कंपनीज के बारे में रिक्वेस्ट करते हो मैं उन पे वीडियोस लाऊं, अपने किसी फ्रेंड को, एक्वाइंटेंस को लाऊं ताकि आपकी हेल्प हो सके. सो थैंक यू सो मच अहमद एंड थैंक यू एवरीवन. सी यू इन द नेक्स्ट वन.